You're listening to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, here to review Friday Night SmackDown from September 8th, 2023. Just when Jimmy Uso wanted out of the bloodline, I was about to say he pulls himself back in, but at the end of the day, Jimmy Uso pulls himself back in. That's a little Sopranos reference if you guys do not know, but this whole SmackDown was basically revolving around Jimmy Uso. We all know Jey Uso is now over on the Raw brand, and he has his own enemies over there. What is Jimmy Uso doing? After causing Jey Uso the tribal combat match at SummerSlam, Jimmy Uso, in a way, kind of did not want to be a part of Roman's group, but now all of a sudden he wants to join back in the bloodline. Even if there is a bloodline, like, let's be honest, there's barely any bloodline left. There's only Roman, Heyman, and Solo. That is it. It's not really a bloodline if you really ask me, but Jimmy Uso wants to be back and be a part of the bloodline once again. In a way, does that make any sense? Honestly, I have no idea. It's kind of convoluted in my opinion. I don't understand why we spent all these months with Jimmy Uso super kicking Roman Reigns, which led to the dissension of the bloodline all of a sudden with Jimmy Uso turning on his own brother, which I think was kind of all expected, but then only for him to join back the bloodline. I don't know. Maybe he won't join back the bloodline. We do not know. It's an interesting story and it has interesting developments, but we're going to raise some eyebrows when it comes to some of this stuff. But the whole SmackDown show was basically revolving around Jimmy Uso, him wanting to join back the bloodline, and of course him wrestling AJ Styles in the main event. Overall thoughts, though, on the SmackDown show, I thought it was a pretty fine show. It's not the best show, to say the least. We had LA Knight versus Austin Theory, a pretty good match. We had a very good match with Finn Balor and Damian Priest to take on the Brawling Brutes, which is a really, really, really good tag team match. Of course, Judgement Day is showing their dominance, as they should be, because, of course, they are on the verge of becoming the top faction, if not already the top faction in World Wrestling Entertainment. A lot of teases on this show. You know, there's a tease with Paul Heyman and LA Knight. Could we be on the verge of seeing a potential LA Knight and Bloodline program or Roman Reigns program? I doubt it, but I love how they tease that. Judgment Day would constantly tease and talk about the Bloodline, how the Bloodline is crumbling and they are the top faction in the WWE. And we also had another tease of Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits going face-to-face with the Judgment Day. A lot of interesting developments and a lot of, I don't want to say placeholders, but definitely teases for what is to come in the next couple of months regarding particular feuds that we will be seeing in the future. But nonetheless, it was a pretty fun show, not the best show, honestly. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. I'm kind of burnt out a little bit, because I kind of started my semester right now. That shit makes no goddamn sense. I started my semester recently, and honestly, I'm more focused on the social aspect of college than this, but hey, man, if I want to grow this thing, I got to put out some content and talk about some wrestling. So I'm going to be going ahead and giving you guys the SmackDown review. Yes, I do know I haven't uploaded a Raw review, and yes, I did watch Raw, and I did watch the Gunther and Chad Gable match. That match was fucking awesome. Those last few moments of the match was fucking amazing. There were literally points in the match where I literally thought Chad Gable was going to get the win. But, of course, Gunther retained the Intercontinental Championship and is officially the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in company history, beating the Honky Tonk Man's record. Fuck the Honky Tonk Man. That's basically everybody's perception on Twitter, which is hilarious. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and talk about Friday Night SmackDown. Before we get on with all this craziness regarding Friday Night SmackDown, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the Virgin Free would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Of course, if you guys had missed it, The AEW Dynamite review, although it's a little late, it's up on the channel. I talk about the fallout from All Out, and there's a lot of, potential feuds that we could be seeing in the future. For example, we saw a phenomenal segment with MJF and Samoa Joe, plus another phenomenal segment with Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page. A lot of storyline developments right here on AEW Dynamite. If you guys haven't checked out the AEW Dynamite review, the link will be in the description below. Also, the AEW All Out review, if you guys haven't checked it out, it is up on the channel. It is, of course, the aftermath of the unfortunate firing of CM Punk. And from what it looks like, AEW will be just fine, because even though the build for this show was way, way, way lackluster, and trust me, it was, they pulled out fucking all the stops on this All Out show. And they basically gave us one of the best pay-per-views that they have ever produced. We had matches like Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita. Bryan Danielson, who was the replacement for CM Punk, against Ricky Starks in the strap match, which was absolutely phenomenal. And plus, we had the amazing main event between Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley. If you guys haven't checked out the AEW All Out review, the link will be in the description below. And, of course, follow me on social media, the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Of course, we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Follow me on social media on Instagram, X, or Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it, and TikTok. The links will be in the description as well, or the names will be in the description below. You can kind of just look it up all over on those platforms. And, of course, subscribe for more content right here on the YouTube channel. All right, let's go ahead and talk about Friday Night SmackDown. The show kicks off with Charlotte Flair and Shotzi taking on Bayley and Io Sky. This whole thing with Io Sky as the champion and her being a part of Damage Control still, I'm kind of through with Damage Control, but there is a story there that kind of does make sense. We do not know when Bayley's going to turn on Io Sky, but clearly that's going to happen at some point. But overall thoughts on the match. I thought the match was a pretty good opener, but nothing really special. Bayley and Charlotte push one another. Charlotte goes for a boot and then goes for a series of chops. Io Sky comes in, and then the heels gang up on Charlotte. Shotzi comes into Charlotte's aid, but then Charlotte and Bayley Charlotte sends Bayley to the barricade. Io then goes for a springboard moonsault on Shotzi on the outside. Once we're back from commercial break, Io faceplants Shotzi down to the mat, and then Bayley makes the tag. Bayley and Io Sky goes for a double boot on the head of Shotzi. After that, we get a cover by Bayley and a kick out. Bayley is in control over Shotzi, but then Shotzi tries to fight back, but then Bayley continues to be in control. We then get the enziguri by Shotzi on Bayley. Shotzi then crawls towards Charlotte to make the tag, but what happens is Bayley grabs her boot. But then Shotzi counters with a kick. Charlotte tags in, she goes to the top, and then she hits the crossbody on both heels. After that, we get a chop by Charlotte, but then on Io, but then we get repeated chops, followed by Charlotte catching Bayley, and she ends up hitting a fall-away slam. After that, she goes for the cartwheel clothesline, and then we get a kick by Charlotte, and then she drops down Io, but then we get the inside cradle by Bayley. We then get a near fall. Charlotte goes for the figure four, but then Io ends up hitting the Meteor, which actually was a pretty dope spot. Charlotte then, Charlotte and Io go to the top. Io ends up hitting the Hurricane Rana. Bayley goes to the top, but then is distracted when Asuka is behind Dakota Kai. After that, Asuka grabs the belt of Io Sky. Then we get a boot by Charlotte taking Bayley down to the outside, and then a boot by Io taking down Io to the outside. Actually, no, Bayley wasn't taken to the outside. My bad. It was only Io. We then get a DDT by Shotzi on Bayley, and then we get a cover, and Shotzi and Charlotte get the win. Back in the ring, Asuka and Io end up facing off. Asuka then places the championship down, and then Asuka leaves. Of course, we have a pay-per-view happening, I believe October 7th, which is Fastlane. So a lot of people were assuming, including myself, that we were going to be getting that match at Fastlane. But WWE has announced that we're going to be getting the Asuka versus Io Sky match for the women's title in 2 weeks on SmackDown. I don't know if that is the right decision to make, because I would have much preferred to happen at the pay-per-view. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. I doubt the match is going to last long, and we're probably going to be seeing a rematch at Fastlane. But we are going to be getting the match 2 weeks from tonight. Paul Heyman, yes, the wise man from the Bloodline, or the two Bloodline. I mean, like, really, the Bloodline's not really the Bloodline anymore. Paul Heyman is backstage, and Jimmy Uso is there. Jimmy Uso's, of course, ranting about last week, and he says, nobody told me anything about being out of the Bloodline. But guess what? I am in. Dude pulled a Silvio Dante from The Sopranos just when they pulled me back out. They pulled me back in. That's the worst fucking Silvio impression I could possibly give you. Trust me. Sopranos is a good show, by the way. But he says, I'm in. What's the strategy? Paul says Solo isn't here tonight, and the tribal chief isn't here tonight. So technically, you're not on your own. Or he says, technically not on your own. Technically, you're now out if you're in. But you're not in until the tribal chief says you're in. Roman did offer you a house, a car, a yacht, and do yourself a favor. Handle AJ Styles, and he will handle Jimmy Uso business. So he basically stated to Jimmy, and these were the exact words by Paul Heyman, handle AJ Styles business, and I will handle Jimmy Uso business with the tribal chief. And before you know it, we will bring this family back together. And then Paul leaves, and then he walks to AJ. Has his phone, of course, with him because he's on the verge of calling Mr. Roman Reigns. Funny, he was talking about him, says AJ. Don't you think you have enough problems with your life until you decided you wanted to tangle with him? That's what Paul said. And then what happens is AJ grabs Paul, and he says he has zero clout around here. And then Jimmy attacks AJ from behind. After that, what happens is after AJ gets beat to the shit, Paul Heyman calls Roman Reigns. Ooh. I love when Paul Heyman does that. Call Roman Reigns. Fucking uses Siri instead of actually going on the actual app, which is hilarious. Damage Control is backstage. Asuka made her presence known, and Bayley says that she should mind her own business. And then Io says that she is ready for Asuka, and that is a challenge for the title. After that, we got a great LA Knight segment. LA Knight, week by week by week, is more over by the minute, man. This guy, those pops, when LA Knight comes out, are louder and louder and louder. Let me talk to you, says LA Knight. I don't know if everyone saw Miz's scintillating performance on Raw, but let's dissect that. How does that song go? I came to play. If I was a moron, I'd be looking at that adjective. And this was a Kevin Nash reference right here. So he says, if he was a moron, let's look at that adjective. Or, not better yet, let's look at that verb, play. He didn't come here to play, Miz. That was a shot at Kevin Nash, by the way. He came here to walk to the top, if anyone, but here he is. But one week, he plays dress up, and then he plays make-believe with Invisible John Cena, and then whines and cries. Oh, LA Knight won because of John Cena, right? Nah. Here's the deal. He didn't ask for Cena to be the special guest referee, and he did not need his endorsement. He endorsed himself to make a stand right here, and he has respect for everything that John Cena has done. But he ended up counting to 3, and he won the match. But if you want to be a cockroach that needs to get stomped for a third time, consider your challenge, and then immediately gets interrupted by the douchebag himself, Mr. Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller comes out and he asks, are you sure that's a good idea after The Miz ran through Cena on Raw? It was almost as if like he wasn't there. Him and his associate, Austin Theory, his associate. Theory is now his associate? What? That makes no goddamn sense. Him and his associate, Austin Theory, were backstage. And Austin Theory comes out and he says, last week, they beat Rey Mysterio and his stepson, Santos. He called Santos Escobar his stepson. They're the only tag team who's undefeated, realistically. They're the greatest tag team of all time if they decided to be. That is so. Why do they give guys like Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, who are an actual tag team, calling themselves the greatest tag team of all time? I know it's supposed to be like a rub to get like heel heat, but in my opinion, it's genuinely stupid. It really is. But they're the only team who's undefeated, realistically. The greatest tag team of all time if they decided to be. And then LA Knight replies, they really need to be proud of yourselves because obviously you are a fan favorite. Go tell your mommy and tell her that I said hi. And then Theory ends up mocking LA Knight in a very piss poor way. And he says, who is the ref that helped LA Knight? Oh yeah, it's the greatest of all time, John Cena. The man I beat at WrestleMania. The megastar who I will beat as well. And he asks Grayson, at 26, he became a 2-time United States champion. And LA Knight, he's just been here. And he's glad he's here. Take that 15 minutes of fame because when he's done with him, The Miz won't waste his time. And then LA Knight calls Grayson a mushmouth, and he calls Austin Theory a cross-eyed half-wit. And after that, he says if they want to get served, they can make that happen right here, right now. TD Garden stands on Legends Way. I'm channeling my inner LA Knight, ladies and gentlemen. And TD Garden stands on Legends Way in a very legendary way because Theory at 26, he can get his keister kicked when everybody's saying LA Knight, yeah. Wait, say it again. LA Knight, yeah. And then we get LA Knight, yeah, taking on Austin Theory. The match was pretty good. A relatively short match, but it was not a bad match. Basically, it's what you would expect. It's basically your typical WWE style match. That's what it basically was. But it wasn't a bad match. We get a collar and elbow tie-up by both men. We get a side headlock by Theory, but then followed by a shoulder tackle. He runs into a back elbow by LA Knight, but then LA Knight ends up going for the neck breaker on Theory. Theory then pushes Knight into the corner, but then we get repeated right hands. And then he drives his knee into the corner. After that, he hits a snap suplex, and then we get a cover and a near fall. LA Knight then tries to pick up Theory, but then LA Knight ends up going for a shoulder tackle. Theory then gets taken to the outside, but then Theory bumps the head of Austin Theory repeatedly onto the announce table. After that, Knight takes Theory back into the ring, but then Knight gets dropped on the apron face first. Then Theory ends up going for a neck breaker on Knight on the floor. Once we're back from commercial break, LA Knight and Theory fight it out, and then Theory misses the elbow drop. We get a series of right hands by LA Knight taking down Theory, but then he ends up going for the Russian leg sweep. After the Russian leg sweep, he goes for, I believe it was a DDT. I actually missed that spot. And then Theory gets sent to the corner. He picks up Theory, but then Knight runs into a boot. Theory goes for a kick. Then Theory ends up going for a rolling blockbuster. We get a cover by Theory and a kick out. Theory then gets dropped onto the outside, but then Knight hits a drop kick on Theory, but then Knight tries to pick up Theory, but then Theory holds on. After that, we get a series of counters and suplexes, but what happens is Theory counters and suplexes Knight. Not a series of... I don't even know what the fuck I was saying, but Theory holds on, and he counters, and he suplexes LA Knight. That's what I was trying to say. Grayson then all of a sudden exposes the turnbuckle for Theory, but then Theory takes Knight back into the ring. Theory then tries to send LA Knight to the exposed turnbuckle, but then Knight counters, and then he slams down Theory with a power slam. After that, he goes for the LA Knight, elbow drop. And then Waller ends up being on the apron. Theory goes for the roll-up, and then we get a near fall, but then Theory almost gets sent to the exposed turnbuckle. LA Knight ends up hitting the BFT, and we get a cover, and LA Knight, gets the win. After that, we get a backstage interview with AJ Styles, and it's safe to say AJ Styles is pissed. After that, he says he's standing and he can fight. Jimmy can jump in from behind as many times he wants, but nothing will stop him from tearing his head off tonight. Meanwhile, Mr. Paulie Dangerously, Mr. Wiseman, Mr. Paul Heyman is backstage with Adam Pearce. He says he wants to know who is being traded from Raw to SmackDown because it's a very interesting topic. Jey Uso has been sent to Raw. Who is going to be traded from Raw to SmackDown? My best bet, it's clearly going to be Cody Rhodes, because if it's not Cody Rhodes, who the hell is it going to be? Cody Rhodes, if you think about it, is the guy to beat Roman Reigns at next year's WrestleMania, so it's going to happen. But what happens is LA Knight comes in. It talks about how he wants a championship match, and he says he has that match. And then Paul introduces himself, and he says he's a huge admirer of his work. And LA Knight is like, really? And then Paul Heyman is like, yeah. And then he says, the next time the guy outside the door tells him that he's here doing business, do yourself a favor and knock first. And then Paul Heyman just goes quietly and is like, are we clear? And then LA Knight replies in typical LA Knight fashion, and goes to the ear of Paul Heyman, and he's like, yeah. What could that tease? Again, these teases on this show. Could we be seeing a LA Knight and Roman Reigns feud? I doubt it. I think it's way too early for LA Knight to fucking feud with a guy like Roman Reigns, in my opinion. But who knows? Maybe that segment was just there for the sake of being there. After that, we got the Judgment Day. Yes, the Judgment Day, the new undisputed tag team champions. All rise, says Damian Priest. All rise with the crew with all the gold. And all rise for the Judgment Day. Who is better than us, says Finn Balor. Nobody. So SmackDown, take a look at Senor Money in the Bank and Grand Slam Finn. your undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. But let's not forget, celebrating his 1-year anniversary after entering himself in the Judgment Day, or joining the Judgment Day, I should say, Dominic Mysterio. And of course, you all know, once Dominic gets the microphone, we get a shit ton of boos by the crowd. I don't want to be this type of fan, but like, bro, like, as a fan watching, I'm very proud of Dominic Mysterio to reach the lengths that he has and really make this whole Judgment Day work, because it has worked perfectly for him, and I think he's doing the best work of his whole career. But still, I don't know, man. This is such a WWE thing to do, and in their defense, they are successful at it. So I can't really get mad at this, but this is just from my personal experience just watching the show. When something like just clicks, WWE tends to overdo it a little bit too much. And I'm not saying the whole Dominic Mysterio booing thing has been a failure, because it's relatively successful. It works. It works well. But for me watching this every fucking week, like, bro, like, I get the message. Like, you don't have to do this shit over and over and over again. Not only that, every time when Dominic Mysterio gets the mic, the first words coming out of his mouth is like, you know. Like, it's always, you know, and then he stops, and then the boos just, like, get louder and louder. Sometimes when I watch the show, literally, I can't even hear a single goddamn word that Dominic is saying. Granted, that is the point, but, you know, it's starting to get a little bit repetitive, in my opinion. Not to say that it's a bad thing, because if you think about it, it's worked in their favor. But me, from my personal experience watching the show, I just think it's a little bit too repetitive. I get the message. You don't got to do it again. But they will continue to do it again, because that's what WWE always does. When something is good, they do it until they beat it down to death. That's what they do. We get a shit ton of boos. And then, of course, he's basically... he says Mommy is on her way in India. She's the WWE Women's World Champion. They are proud of Rhea Ripley. And now, speaking of proud, they are also proud that they accomplished something that not even the Bloodline can do. Ooh, a shot to the Bloodline. Also something even Roman Reigns couldn't do. That was not only beat Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, but they took their undisputed tag team championships from Sami and KO. Dominic with the mic again. The boos. Dominic says that they're all equals, and they're the most dominant group of all of WWE. The Brawling Brutes come out. They say it's fight night, and then Holland says, you know, he couldn't hear Dominic because he was getting, you know, booed. But didn't they just say that they were the most dominant group in the WWE? They're looking, you know, to put on a banger in B-Town, and they could have picked the worst opponents, or they could have they basically picked the worst first opponents. He made a happy of breaking fellas like you, and it's not him that you should worry about. It's this fella, and he's pointing at Butch. Balor laughs, and actually, I loved this fucking part. So Balor just laughs at him, and he says he doesn't care about him pointing at Butch, and he basically just points at Butch. He says, I don't care about you, and then he's pointing at Butch. But Butch grabs the finger of Balor, and he just twists his fucking fingers. And then Priest gets taken to the outside, and then the brawl breaks loose. And then we end up getting Finn Balor and Damian Priest taking on the Brawling Brutes. Balor is in control over Butch, but then Butch targets the fingers, of course, of Balor. And then he stomps on the elbow of Balor, but then Holland holds on. Then he spins Balor around, but then we get the double underhook suplex by Holland on Balor, but then he picks up Balor. Balor escapes. He tags in Priest, but then Priest hits a kick. We then get a shoulder tackle by Holland, but then later on, Priest is in control. Holland throws down with Priest and Balor, but then Priest clotheslines Holland repeatedly. Balor tags in, but Pretty Deadly, we haven't seen him on TV in a while. Pretty Deadly is watching backstage. We get a cover by Balor and a kick out. Balor goes for a side headlock on Holland, but then Balor goes for a front face lock. Holland then tries to pick him up, but then Balor reverses, but then Holland picks him up. He drops him down. Butch tags in, and then we get repeated enziguris in the corner by Butch. He drives his knee onto the arm of Balor, but then he ends up hitting the Shining Wizard. And then Butch goes to the top. He hits a moonsault off the top on the outside to Priest. Once we're back from commercial break, Butch ends up hitting a superplex off the top on Balor. After that, Balor reverses, Butch taking him down with an elbow. Priest then goes for repeated kicks on Holland, and then Rich counters and drops Priest down. We then get a splash by Priest, but then we get a double team by the Brutes, and then we get a cover and a near fall. Butch then runs into a kick by Priest, but then we get a cover by Priest and another kick out. Later on in the match, Balor goes to the top. He misses the coup de grace. After that, Butch goes for the crucifix pin, but then we get a near fall. Enziguri by Butch, and then we get the overhead kick by Balor. Priest tags in. Butch counters the choke slam into a kick, but then Holland runs through Priest, but then Butch goes to the top. Balor takes him out, but then Balor goes for the South of Heaven, and then he hits it on Butch on the top of Holland. Finn tags in. He hits the coup de grace, and we get a cover, and Balor and Damian Priest get the win. As obvious, because of the fact that they are the new tag team champions, and they should not lose a single match whatsoever. No storyline development regarding the Judgment Day. Of course, they're telling a story with J.D. McDonough. J.D. McDonough has, in a way, kind of been inserting himself into the Judgment Day. He's not an official member, but, of course, J.D. McDonough wants to be a part of the group. And they've been talking about it this past Monday on Raw, but there was no really storyline development regarding that nature. But after that, Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits come out. Both teams face off against one another. And Bobby Lashley gets the microphone and he says, they're right about one thing. The bloodline is crumbling, but the Judgment Day aren't the ones that are going to be taking over. It's going to be us. I can't get mad at that. That was pretty badass, to say the least. I'm excited for that. Street Profits versus Balor and Priest. Sign me the fuck up. After that, AJ backstage is pissed at the Good Brothers. He pissed that they didn't come to his aid when Jimmy attacked him, and he says, you know what? I'm going to do this all alone. Meanwhile, we got AJ Styles versus Jimmy Uso in the main event. The moral of the story is that Jimmy Uso is trying to insert himself back into the bloodline, even though he did a lot of heinous acts like kicking Roman Reigns, causing this whole fucking situation to begin with, and also basically costing Jey Uso the match, helping Roman Reigns, but at the same time, in the next couple weeks, Jimmy Uso was like, I'm not going to join you, Roman. I don't want any part of your shit. Now, all of a sudden, you want to be back? I have no idea. AJ goes after Jimmy. We got a series of kicks to the back of the neck of Jimmy. We get a roll-up by Jimmy and a near fall. We then get the second roll-up by Jimmy, and then he grabs the rope. We get a near fall. After that, AJ goes for a snap suplex. He follows up with a backbreaker. We then get a chop by Jimmy, and then we get an enziguri by AJ, followed by a right hand by AJ. AJ goes for a kick, and then he sets up the Styles Clash, but then Jimmy escapes to the outside. Jimmy is walking around the ring, but then Jimmy goes back into the ring. We then get an elbow by Jimmy, but then Jimmy is in control. We get a cover by Jimmy and a near fall. Jimmy later goes to the outside, but then we get a baseball slide by AJ. AJ's on the apron, but then he slides into a super kick. Solo and Paul Heyman are on the stage. He bumps AJ headfirst onto the steel steps. And then we go to commercial break. Once we're back from break, AJ is in control. He goes for repeated chops on Jimmy. Solo and Paul are watching while Jimmy tries to bring himself back into the bloodline, of course. Jimmy is in control. He goes for the running hip attack in the corner. We get a cover by Jimmy and a kick out. And then he applies the side headlock. AJ tries to fight back, but then Jimmy takes him down. Jimmy wrenches the face of AJ, but then he continues to have the side headlock applied. AJ then counters the belly-to-back suplex, but then both men slap one another. We get a spinning enziguri by Jimmy, but then AJ ends up going for the Pele. AJ then clotheslines Jimmy to the outside, but then AJ goes for a forearm. AJ then sends Jimmy back into the ring, but then AJ goes for the phenomenal forearm after that. Jimmy escapes, and then AJ ends up going for the Ushigoroshi. We get a cover by AJ and a kick out, but then he picks up Jimmy, but then we get a kick to the midsection. He ends up slapping AJ. After that, we get a cover by Jimmy and a kick out. Jimmy picks up AJ. AJ escapes. We get a headbutt by Jimmy, but then AJ follows up with a backslide. Jimmy escapes, but then AJ comes back with the DDT. We get a cover by AJ and a kick out, but then AJ is on the apron. He ends up looking at Solo Sikoa, who's in the ringside area with Paul Heyman. After that, he goes to the other side of the apron, but then Jimmy hits a super kick. After that, AJ later on is on the outside. Jimmy stares at Solo, but then Solo turns his back on Jimmy. Not legitimately turns his back, but he physically, legitimately, turned his back on Jimmy Uso. After that, AJ takes out Jimmy, and then he takes out Solo. He sends Jimmy to the ring post, but then AJ's in the ring, hits the phenomenal forearm, and we get a cover, and AJ Styles wins the match. And Jimmy Uso, with all this pressure on him on wanting to go back into the bloodline, he eventually fails. But after that, Solo runs into the ring. AJ retreats, but after that, from behind, Damian Priest and Finn Balor attack AJ Styles. What? After that, they send AJ back into the ring, and they offer Solo Sikoa AJ Styles in one piece. After that, then Solo hits the Samoan spike on AJ, with the show ending with Solo staring at the Judgment Day. Interesting developments. I mean, the Judgment Day has been poking shots at the Bloodline for months, but I don't know. These are very interesting developments going on. Could we be seeing a pack together with the Judgment Day and the Bloodline? I doubt it. But it's very weird, very interesting developments going on. Why Judgment Day was involved, I have no idea. But it's probably going to tease towards something, further on down the line in the future. But nonetheless, this wasn't a bad match, and Jimmy Uso eventually failed at what he wanted to do, and that was rejoin the Bloodline. But at the end of the day, it is Roman who makes the final decision, because he is, of course, the tribal chief, who was not on the show, by the way. And that was your SmackDown review from September 8th, 2023. Overall thoughts on this show. It wasn't a bad show. I wasn't really that focused when I was watching the show. Nothing really interested me besides the Jimmy Uso stuff. But even then, the Jimmy Uso stuff, in a way, technically just does not make any sense in my opinion. But maybe I think they'll figure out a way to see how this storyline eventually goes. But nonetheless, nothing really special. It wasn't a bad show. It's just nothing really special happened on this show, in my opinion. And a large portion of that is due to the fact that Roman Reigns is not even on the show. And usually when Roman Reigns is on the show, shit's going to go down. But unfortunately, Roman Reigns is not on this show. But yeah, that was my SmackDown review from September 8th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Reg Ricky DeRays signing out. I'll see you guys later. Peace.